Welcome, climate viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com and WeatherModificationHistory.com. We're going to continue our series on why cirrus clouds matter, and let's go all the way back to the beginning. A lot of people tend to think this whole chemtrail phenomena is new. Well, I'm here to break your, belief system into little bitty chunks and rebuild you back into a full individual who has a full understanding of the entire history of this cloudy problem, this contrail conundrum. So we're going to go way back. We're going to go back to 1948. We're going to work our way forward real quickly. For those new to the channel, hey man, if you've never been here before, why haven't you hit that subscribe button? Just look me up on YouTube, type ClimateViewer in, you'll find my channel. If you haven't already done that and click the bell, that'd be great. Any support you give me goes right back to helping the channel out, helping us grow. And with that being said, let's do some homework tonight. We're going to start by going over to WeatherModificationHistory.com and let's go ahead and make that full screen, and here we go. So for those who haven't been here before, why haven't you? It's the internet's best kept secret, and it's loaded with stuff that can really clear your skies and help you understand. Specifically, the interactive timeline, which is loaded with everything from geoengineering to HAARP, cloud seeding, weather warfare, and everything in between. But you can come up here to the top, hit tags, hit artificial clouds, and scroll it down to just the bare, bones of the problem we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to start right here, all the way back in 1948. And this is what I titled, Contrail Cirrus Complaints Begin Nationwide. Now, most people don't know that this started so long ago. I didn't know this. I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade, and I would say it wasn't until about 7 years in before I, really found some of this older material. And I give a lot of credit to Dominic Marama. He's the, generous soul graphics artist, brother from another mother I have up in Canada that created the entire newspaper section of Weather Modification History.com. If you haven't checked it out, there's 857 newspapers on there. And I'm still reading new ones on the regular. So I know you haven't read them all. But I took, some of the most important ones and put them into the timeline because it's important. And the reason it's important is because when you start to look at the history of this stuff and you see things like this, the news, 1948, mystery of Point Augusta sky trails. Residents were intrigued this morning by a trail of what appeared to be a thick white cloud stretching across the sky from the southeast to northwest. Some residents claimed the trail came from an object, presumably a plane, traveling over the town as fast as at a fast speed and a very high altitude. The trail was probably made by exhaust gases and was clearly visible for up to 15 minutes. Former Air Force and Army men who have seen high-altitude planes in action said they had not seen anything similar. They think the plane must have been very big and of a new type. 1948. So is this chemtrail thing a new thing? That right there, I'm going, Adelaide, this is Australia, 1948. Really? That's not even where, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Tip of the freaking iceberg. 1951, plane vapor trails. This is in Australia's pioneer cooperative labor journal, The Worker. And the question of what causes those white trails sometimes seen behind a plane traveling at high altitude came up for discussion at a recent General Electric Science Forum in America? The answer is air at the front of the plane, blah, 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 blah. It makes trail of fog. But regardless, you see, even from 1948 to 51, people are starting to ask questions. What the hell's going on? This is new. I don't think it's cool. Moving along. This is in Spokane, Washington's Daily Chronicle in December 6, 1958. Jet trails, dim sun, Palm Springs gripes. The Air Force has long since resigned to just fuss about noise from its jets. Now comes Palm Springs, California, with a new complaint that jet trails overhead are so thick they are beginning to blot out the sun. 1958. Riddle me this. For all of these fear porn channels on YouTube, for all of the posts you've read, for all of the movies and articles and things that have been said about this chemtrail problem, this contrail Cirrus problem, the history of plane farts, back in 1958, the city of Palm Springs, California, literally said that jet trails overhead are so thick they are beginning to blot out the sun. It gets crazier. So, of course, they went to the military. Because as they put it, the contrails are not disappearing, but are breaking down into a haze and creating a cloud-like appearance in the sky. With the unlimited expanse of barren, uninhabited land in the West, does such activity have to be centered over a resort area, which is offering the visitor cloudless skies and unlimited sunshine? The Air Force, so far, is flabbergasted. Wait for it. New fuss raised over jet trails. Exact same article, different newspaper. This is in Bend, Oregon, which I used to live in briefly. Beautiful place. But what did the military say in response? This is absolutely priceless and is the cover image of the video we're showing today, as you saw it here. You just can't make this stuff up. So Air Force gives village two choices: live with the trails or move. I thought they were flabbergasted. 1 year ago in Palm Springs, California, as you can see right here. Wrong button. Let's zoom this down. 1 year ago in Palm Springs, California, the Air Force was flabbergasted. 1 year later, the Air Force is saying, live with it or move the freaking town. So this plane fart problem has been around for a very long time. 1958, especially, it's kind of coming to a head. The last article was 1958 when Palm Springs started complaining. This one is January 31st, 1959, from the Desert Sun, Palm Springs, California, Saturday, January 31st, 1959. Air Force gives village two choices: live with the trails or move. The Vapor Trail story is explained to City Councilman Ted McKinney, Chamber of Commerce Manager Jimmy Cooper, and Chamber President Warren Slaughter by Brigadier General Prescott M. Spicer, commander of the 27th Air Division, during the Summit Conference on Vapor Trail Problem at Norton Air Force Base. And there you go. There's an actual photo of the meeting. Brigadier General over here telling all the city officials, hey man, Air Force says, suck it. What are you going to do about it, bro? Move your town or just deal with these clouds? Man, what was, I'm trying to remember. What was the slogan? Oh yeah, that's right. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. 1959. Okay. So this is by no means new. And I could read you this entire article. I'm going to let you guys enjoy getting into that. But let's put it this way. Let's face it, men, said a crisp talking, star-studded general. You'll either have to live with the vapor trails or move the city of Palm Springs. The resort area, it appears, is known as the Palm Springs intersection, the freeway interchange of all West Coast aerial traffic. So city officials and civic leaders, in an apparently unanimous, unspoken agreement, decided that a peaceful coexistence with the Air Force was the wisest course. Wah, 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 wah. And that's how the story's gone ever since. It's hey, this is gonna happen. If you don't like it, suck it. Go to my no square. And that's unfortunate, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. And as you can see in this article, I have several other newspaper articles on this. U.S. jet planes will lose their vapor trails soon. September 18th, 1960. Oh, well, we all know that didn't happen. Vapor trails, which in the past have indicated the presence of high-flying U.S. Air Force jets, will be ended, the Air Force Research and Development Command announced. Air Force scientists said a breakthrough was reached after more than 5 years of research at the LG Hanscom Field. A 6-engine B-47 bomber crew, following the directions from the ground, first eliminated the vapor trails from the engines on the right side, while the three left engines continued to produce familiar white vapor trail streams. Then the vapor trails poured from the right engines, while the left engines left no track behind them. So wait, you're telling me that a B-47 bomber, like we all saw in World War II, with the one with all the guns on it, all around, tail gun, belly gun. You guys know the plane. Come on. It's got propellers, not even a jet engine, that they were able to stop making vapor trails on either side at will. Getting more interesting. And then another lengthy article, Man Making Earth a Bad Place to Live, professor says, and he talks about some vapor trail stuff in there as well. Jets increase clouds, as it says right there. One time, the region of operation of most of the SSTs might easily be 100% covered with cirrus clouds. The net effect of this would be to further reduce the heating of the earth, and blue skies might become a rarity. And this is 1968. So why am I going through all these? Let's move along to the next little chapter of this story. If you go to a different version of the timeline, these are all just in, chronological order, obviously. Damn, the Bering Strait used nuclear-powered propellers to melt the poles. Okay, what we got going on there? What does this have to do with anything? Oh, wait. Russian oil engineer P.M. Borisov, I keep hitting the wrong button. Start button. Proposed melting the Arctic and Greenland ice caps by spreading black coal dust on the ice or creating cloud cover across the poles to trap heat. Now, we know this to be true. This is something I also highlighted in my 2015 speech to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C., in a live hearing on C-SPAN, that these clouds, the cirrus clouds that are created by planes, trap heat like a blanket. They do cool somewhat during the day, but they trap more heat than they actually cool, because heat coming in from the sun hits the ground and then it's not able to escape back to space. They've known this since 1958. Clearly. Pretty interesting stuff. So we're going to go back to here, close that out. That's melt the Arctic. And then We have U.S. Navy creates and destroys clouds using carbon black dust, 1958 as well. Same time as the, Palm Springs problem and the Air Force giving Palm Springs the big middle finger. As Dr. Florence Van Straten, you can see her picture right here. That is Dr. Florence Van Straten. She said, we dropped carbon black. Well, here, let's make it full screen so you guys can see it very clearly. Right here. We dropped carbon black suspended in liquid over a track a mile long and produced a solid line of clouds 1 mile long. Dr. Van Straten told a reporter, when we dropped 1.5 pound dry packages of carbon black, we produced single clouds with each drop. The Navy team seeded 7 clouds with carbon and dissipated or destroyed each of them from 2.5 to 20 minutes. Each cloud turned gray and then rapidly disappeared. Dr. Van Straten said, aside from the cost of the airplanes, we spent less than $5 on the experiments in Georgia. Carbon black is used in printers, ink, and automobile tires and is nothing more than soot. It is available cheaply in commercial quantities as a byproduct of burning and natural gas. So while Palm Springs was complaining about their skies being completely clouded, while the next year the Air Force is telling them, hey man, you guys live in a highway in the sky intersection of all of the West Coast flight routes, you're just going to have to deal with it. Carbon dust is similar to graphene. However, graphene is specifically made from graphite and is magnetically charged. It is a electrical supercapacitor. So graphene does differ substantially from carbon black, but they are both made of carbon. That's the only thing they really have in common. But good question, J. Armstrong. So carbon black dust can create and destroy clouds. 1958. U.S. Navy, Dr. Florence Van Straten. This is fact. And, secondary source on this, carbon black controls clouds, October 6, 1958. And you can see that here. And they actually have photos of the clouds they were creating. Pretty cool stuff, right? Navy creation destroys clouds. Ordinary carbon black is used. September 1958. Florence Times. Coincidental name there. And lady meteorologist toys with clouds to seek tranquilizer for bad storms. History is so freaking interesting to me. I don't know. It's just me, I guess. But no, it's not just me. You guys are interested too. You know you are. Moving along. The Mateotron jet engines to create clouds. This was a Russian experiment. A Russian and a French experiment. We'll go both ways with that one. But a French scientist, J. Dessens, of the Observatoire du Puy de Dôme, Claremont University, reports in Nature that discovery by accident of a way to make tornadoes artificially, and therefore a means of studying the conditions under which they arise using jet engines. And it was actually called the Mateotron. So multiple Mateotron jet engines used in the USSR in the 1970s for successful cloud formation experiments. Interestingly enough, in 2008, Mosh Alamaro of MIT University at the Hurricane Modification Workshop proposed tugging a boat or barge with a bunch of jet engines on it to control hurricanes by dispersing carbon black dust. Same idea, decades and decades apart. So we're talking from the 50s all the way to 2008. Here comes this same idea. Hey, we can use these jet engines to also steer hurricanes. We can make tornadoes and the Russians made clouds using the Mateotron jet engines. Project Highwater was more of it's also an artificial cloud, but it's more of space weather modifications. We're going to skip that one for now. But I really want to get to this one. So 2 states sue airlines over what they called at the time smoke pollution of the skies. And this is really the biggie. This is the one that really punched me right in the face because I couldn't even believe this was a thing. It's likely contrails are affecting precipitation to a much greater extent than present deliberate seeding operations, from the paper On the Possibility of Weather Modification by Aircraft Contrails, October 1970. But more to the point, the government will tell the nation's 43 commercial airlines Tuesday that they must end pollution of the skies with jet engine smoke by 1972 or face punitive legislation from Congress. Mainly at issue is the installation of a redesigned combustor or burner can on the 3,000 existing commercial jet engines of one maker that reportedly account for 70% of all smoke pollution from airlines. So, Sister Golden Hair, we're going to be on acid rain in just a second. I love how informed my audience is. You guys are so brilliant. You already know where I'm going with this. So, interestingly enough, and we'll just go straight to the sources, right? And this is from that article. U.S. to clamp down on jet pollution. January 1970, St. Petersburg Times in Florida. And that's what I just read to you about. They were going to, end smoke pollution of the skies. So in 1970, chemtrails were called smoke pollution of the skies. In 1950s, they were called just vapor trails that were blotting out the sun. Lots of different terminology in this. Were they contrails then? Yeah. Were they chemtrails then? Yeah. Were they plane farts then? Yes. Were they contrail cirrus then? Yes. Were they making clouds that block out the sun? Yes. Is that geoengineering? Yes. Is it intentional or not? I mean, the U.S. Navy can create clouds on purpose. That's intentional, clearly. Is commercial aviation do it intentionally or not? You be the judge. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? As far back as 1948 to 1970, when 2 states, the state of Illinois and New Jersey, officials say they will not settle pollution suits against the nation's major airlines out of court, despite Tuesday's agreement between the airlines and the federal government to clean up jet aircraft exhaust. Representatives of 31 major domestic airlines agreed to install burner cans to eliminate most of the smoke from their nearly 1,000 jet aircraft by 1972. The cost is estimated between $13 to $15 million, and the airline officials indicated they could probably absorb this expense without an immediate fare increase. We expect to get this agreement written into an enforceable court order, said Richard D. Sullivan, director of New Jersey's Division of Clean Air and Water, because basically Illinois and New Jersey were completely overcast from all the flights. 1970. And even though the Secretary of Transportation, James A. Volpe, pictured down here, stepped in and he said, man, we got to stop this. We got 2 states suing all the airline industry. Some airline fat cats lined my wallet and said, hey, make this go away quick, fast, do something. So he jumped in between the lawsuit, the airline industry, and the 2 states and said, look, we came up with a solution. Burner cans. We're going to redesign the combustors on the jet engines. And that should get rid of all the smoke in the sky. And The clouds should go away. Yay! 70% reduction in pollution. Yay! We're all going to win here. But did it? Did anything change? They said they had by 1972. Well, unfortunately, they didn't, because as we can clearly see here, this is the Canberra Times from October 15th, 1981. And here are jets leaving lots of trails, jet vapor trails, altering the climate over Chicago. Where is Chicago? Illinois, which was one of the states that was suing the airline industry. Illinois. Jets changing climate for good or ill. The crowded skies around Chicago are causing cloudy skies and changing the climate along flight paths into the world's busiest airport. These are the facts. This is the history. This is undeniable. Take this to your local debunker, chemtrail troll, and shove it in their face. Because I eat chemtrail debunkers for lunch. And I do it with just facts. You can do this too. And the facts are that when somebody tells you it's just water vapor, it's just contrails, man, it's just normal, it's all normal, they are full of crap. There's a long history of the airline industry skirting any type of regulation for the damage that they're doing to destroy the blue skies that we have, to calling it accidental geoengineering. And even though they were sued by Illinois and New Jersey, two states literally sued all the airlines, you've never heard this on any other channel ever. Nothing was done about it because this is dated 1981. And they had till 1972 to clean up their act. And did anything change? Nothing changed. Nothing changed. What did change is that more people were now studying this phenomenon. In fact, Illinois got real interested in it because the University of Illinois actually has an atmospheric science section, State Water Survey Division, Illinois Institute of National Resources, effect of contrail cirrus on surface weather conditions in the Midwest, Phase 1 by Stanley Changnon and Richard Simonon and Wayne M. Wendland. And this is a pretty lengthy, this is August 1980. This is 8 years after the state of Illinois sued the airline industry. Here you have the University of Illinois studying contrail cirrus. So let's do some semantics, some ontology. Let's talk about the verbiage you've been using. Is it helpful to call them chemtrails? I mean, for getting the attention of people who have been, led astray by fear porn peddlers, I use the word chemtrails as a catch-all for all of the different types of upper atmospheric chemical dispersions. Whether intentional or not, I use the word chemtrails. If I'm talking to a scientist, I say contrail cirrus, aviation-induced cloudiness, contrail-induced cirrus clouds, all of their terminology. If you don't know this terminology, you never find this information. You're not able to get into the brains of the people who are studying all of these things and really understand the scope of the problem. So in my previous video, we covered how NATO from 1988 to 1997 changed from gasoline to diesel fuel, and that in and of itself, 10 times the amount of calcium, 5 times the amount of aluminum, all of the metal particulates that were dispersed in, all of the NATO states or countries around the world, really exacerbated the problem in the modern era. But what we don't realize as a whole, as a group, as a community, is that this problem goes much further back. So you have to look at this, and as a great philosopher once said, there's layers to the ship player tiramisu. And if you don't understand all the layers that the U.S. Navy started creating and destroying clouds with carbon black dust in 1958, that the Air Force told Palm Springs, screw off, live with it, 1959. That the Illinois and New Jersey states sued the airline industry and nothing was done about it. The airline industry is like, hey, we'll change our burner cans, our combustors in our jet engines, and that'll reduce 70% of the pollution coming out of our planes. That should lead to blue skies again. Didn't happen. Guess what? 2015, when I went to the EPA hearing, they came out with, they said they were going to actually do something about it. But did they? They decided they were going to use biofuels for contrail control. You cannot make this shit up. Their exact words were, if we use biofuels for contrail control, it will reduce particulate emissions by, wait for it, 70%. The exact same thing that happened before. So Illinois and New Jersey sue the airline industry. Secretary of Transportation James Volpe steps in and says, hey, let's not write any laws screwing with the airplanes, because us globalists and us, legislators, we love to fly. All us rich people, we're flying all the time. Can't have anything happening to the airlines. Obama gets the EPA to try to write laws on greenhouse gases coming out of planes because COP21, because climate change, because polar bears and shit. And what do? I go not only by myself, but I take 4 other chemtrail activists, Patrick Roddy, Max Bliss, Amanda Bays, and Michael Saraceno. You can watch the entire video. And it's in the list. You can see me up here. We'll just go there now. And when we went, this is me, standing in front of the US EPA along with my chemtard buddies, taking it to them. And what happened? I told everybody, write your stuff and, submit your own comments. There's a hearing coming up. Here's how you do it. Call these people, here's where you email it. Here's where you snail mail it. Just please get in on this thing. And, I went there and I gave my speech, and you can see it right here.
Passes in what can only be called a violation of the spirit of the law. Air pollution which may reasonably be anticipated to endanger public health or welfare. That's the quote. As you can see by the wording in the Clean Air Act, lead, barium, aluminum, and trade secret toxic chemicals clearly present a greater danger to public health than greenhouse gases, no matter how much climate science you accumulate. Furthermore, material safety data sheets of aviation fuel and their additives almost always contain the same warning: do not dump in water. Yet, raw fuel dumping or burning these dangerous chemicals, and then dumping them in water is somehow safe. Finally, despite great efforts to find bioaccumulation or biomagnification studies on precipitated aviation pollutants, none seem to exist. The EPA and Obama administration are ignoring the global outrage over the most visible climate change concern from airplanes: cloud creation. Do a search for the word chemtrails on the internet, and you will see millions of concerned citizens who look up and wonder, what in the world are they spraying? Despite what you may think of the myriad of maladies attributed to these clouds, the global outrage is nonetheless clear. They are right to be worried, and we should all be concerned. The EPA's claim that CO2 is a greater threat to human health than contrails and aviation-induced cloudiness is based on incomplete IPCC data that downplays the effects of contrails on our climate. The IPCC's fourth assessment of contrail radiative forcing only accounted for linear contrails, meaning any contrail that spreads out and turns into cirrus clouds was not accounted for. How significant is this heat-trapping contrail conundrum? Quote, Contrails formed by aircraft can evolve into cirrus clouds indistinguishable from those formed naturally. These spreading contrails may be causing more climate warming today than all the carbon dioxide emitted by aircraft since the start of aviation. Another researcher stated a single aircraft operating in conditions favorable for persistent contrail formation appears to exert a contrail-induced radiative forcing some 5,000 times greater than the estimates of the average persistent contrail radiative forcing from the entire civil aviation fleet.
Appreciate you, Quantum.
Although
Thank you,
this
brother.
research has now been incorporated into the IPCC computer models and revised down, in my opinion, these claims highlight gaping holes in climate science. As of 2013, quote, aerosol cloud interactions are one of the main uncertainties in climate research. Scientific understanding of how contrails transition into cirrus clouds is severely lacking but rapidly evolving, with the latest research showing that cirrus clouds are filled with metal aerosols from human sources. Quote, the big one we found is lead, coming from things like tetraethyl lead in fuels, still used today in light aviation. So that's probably the biggest metal that we find, or the most frequent metal that we find, but we find a whole host of different metals actually. Apparently, small amounts of metal particulates have major effects on cirrus clouds. Quote, it would seem that you would have to change all of the aerosol in the atmosphere very radically to get a big effect on the clouds, but because mineral dust and metallic particles are such a small amount of the particulate matter, just 1% or 2%, it means that you only have to change about 1% or 2% of the particles to get a big effect on these clouds. The latest research casts doubts on the IPCC's contrail assumptions and requires serious consideration when addressing the real climate change impact of aviation. High-altitude metals in cirrus cloud condensation nuclei are likely coming from leaded avgas and jet exhaust. Contrails are making cirrus clouds, and small changes in atmospheric metal have large impacts on cirrus cloud creation. Cirrus clouds trap heat and are likely to have a greater climate change impact than CO2. Finally, aviation-induced cloudiness endangers future growth in solar energy, affects tourism and spending, and is projected to make terrestrial astronomy impossible by 2050. Geoengineering scientists, NASA, NOAA, FAA, USDA, DOE, and international corporate partners are discussing the use of biofuels and sulfur-doped jet fuels for contrail control. This cirrus cloud seeding with bismuth triiodide to melt these clouds away. The EPA should be directly involved in these discussions. As a result of these recent findings, I strongly encourage the EPA to consider expanding the scope of this endangerment to include metal particulates and cloud formation from jet exhaust. If the EPA complies with the spirit of the Clean Air Act, they will protect us from metal aerosols attributed to Alzheimer's, autism, cancer, and a plethora of other debilitating illnesses. If the EPA is truly concerned about aviation-induced climate change, they will regulate the production of contrails and cirrus clouds, which change our climate to a much greater extent than the sum of the 6 greenhouse gases named in this proposal. Regulating heavy metals and aviation-induced cloudiness will be meaningless without proper verification. Even though ICAO members sign a binding agreement to only use certain chemicals in their gas tanks, we all know agreements and regulations are useless without proper verification. Therefore, I request mandatory, random testing of jet exhaust be immediately implemented. This is the most important step the EPA can take to do its due diligence to protect us from harmful pollution and get real-world data to improve future regulations. Most of the data behind this endangerment finding comes from research in highly controlled environments where most variables are known. We need verification of non-ideal situations where fuel fouling, fame contamination, or improper maintenance end in vastly different exhaust particulates than seen in lab settings. To achieve verification, I propose that the EPA randomly attach a trailing probe to both foreign and domestic flights, then collect and analyze the results to determine real-world exhaust constituents. Alternatively, ground-based LiDAR observations may be possible over fixed high-traffic areas and prevent possible terrorist attacks using aerosols. Either way you choose, we need verification and protection. In conclusion, the EPA should expand this endangerment to include metal aerosols and cloud creation, create a verification system that includes all aircraft, protects us from aviation pollution, holds violators accountable, and commits to better scientific accuracy for future determinations. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of so many who could not be here. And thank you for listening to a layperson's views on this subject. While I appreciate the efforts of the Center for Biological Diversity, the Sierra Group, and the Friends of the Earth to get the EPA to hold the aviation industry accountable, the poor people like myself have to live near these airports, under these fuel dumps, and under these clouded skies. I hope that some faith can be restored in our EPA by your action here and now. Tell the ICAO that they will meet your demands and our demands, not the other way around. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you for all of your comments. Second panel. Next one.
Yes. Wrecked them. And the beautiful thing about this is
Michael Saraceno. I'm a citizen.
Michael Saraceno, I met him on Twitter. And then Amanda Bays is right here. You can watch the entire history, the entire hearing.
Was especially disheartening since I have been led to believe
I didn't
the
include all of the
Environmental
NGOs
Protection
that had to show
was
up,
the ultimate
or
protector of the
you know
environment.
how I'm the
Additionally,
reason
the EPA
that
advised me to contact the Department
YouTube
of
has been
Environmental
censoring the
Quality
crap
for the
out of
state of Virginia.
your
Not
yeah they
surprisingly, the
dude
DEQ
YouTube
informed
literally
me that
was
they do not
censoring my
regulate
own
global sources
comments
of
on my own
emissions,
video
don't go to airports, and don't check
for a
what is
while
being loaded on
on my
planes.
last video
As for
on
my
Cirrus
request
Clouds
for my
Matter.
yard to be
I tried to
tested for
post the
heavy
links
metal,
you know
chemical, or
before and
biological
during the stream,
contamination,
and it
I
kept
was told
saying
that the
there's a
Virginia
problem with the
DEQ could not
comments.
use state money to test for those
So I
materials.
don't understand it.
Furthermore,
Yeah.
my complaint was in an area that
I'm
they
just a
had no
layperson.
authority to investigate.
That's
Another
hey,
dead
be
end.
humble, right? You got to be humble.
I reported Naval Station.
And of course, some of you may know
For thousands of miles and can be seen by
Diana.
anyone visiting
I
NASA.gov.
greatly appreciate your support. Diana
These
says,
trails
"Hi, Jim.
persist regardless of altitude.
Why are
temperature,
they terraforming the get out of it. Terraforming the planet with dangerous chemicals to lie about global warming?" Interestingly enough, you may not know this, but if you go to, let's say, Wayback Machine, and you type in www.terraforminginc.com. What you're going to see is, before I called it ClimateViewer.com, I called it terraformingincorporated.com. Oh, come on. Don't be like that to me. Let's go find one that actually works. Here. There we go. This was before ClimateViewer.com. My logo was Terraforming Incorporated. And of course, you know, before that, it was Resonated.com. But as you can clearly see, that was my logo, Terraforming Incorporated. So right on the money, Diana. I don't normally show people this stuff. But even back then, I was saying, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. This is an early version of ClimateViewer 3D. Back when the Toxic Avenger was my logo on the map itself, and it was still Google Earth before Google shut me down. Just doing a little bit of, showing you guys a little history. This is the Google Earth plugin version 7 before Google shut me down, and I had to learn to recode the entire thing from scratch. But eventually I replaced, I would have it flip between showing the Toxic Avenger and Dr. Evil. So like, depending on, you know, if you hit refresh, it might be Dr. Evil down in the bottom corner, or it would be the Toxic Avenger. And my website, obviously ClimateViewer 3D launch app right there. The history of weather control timeline. I wonder if it even has that still. I mean, this is before weathermodificationhistory.com, and I don't know that it'll actually work. But yeah, this and the history of chemtrails, which was a separate timeline. And of course, now with weathermodificationhistory.com, I've combined all that together. Back then, I was calling it Operation Clarity and the Clarity Clause. Today, I call it the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. But hey, things change over time. Yeah, I don't think it's going to load this. I mean, this is just too much for this little jewel to handle. Oh, yeah, might actually show. Is it going to show? That'd be freaking amazing. The history of weather control on terraformingincorporated.com. Anyway, big digression. So, we'll see if that actually loads. I'll check back on that. But Patrick Roddy came with me as well. He gave a speech. And, of course, my buddy Max Bliss just had to drop the bombshell at the end. And I think you guys will really appreciate what he had to say.
Climate has always had natural variability and weather extremes. However, these days, some weather extremes can be stimulated with technology. Is it appropriate to reassess the anthropogenic global warming theory and replace it with climate change is man-made by using covert weather and climate modification technology known as geoengineering for geopolitical ends? We do not need to be scientists to observe the sky and see the obvious negative effects aviation is having and research the spiraling health impacts. Just start looking up and wake up. We do not consent to the use of weather and climate modification or the despotic New World Order.
Or the despotic New World Order drop mic at the US EPA. Oh my God, best day ever. Watch that video. Watch the entire thing. It's about 47 minutes. I only cut together the 5 of us that, went there as a whole. And for those who don't know, Max Bliss actually flew over from Europe to be at that EPA hearing. Oh my God, it was so great. I was like, all right, so I've got me. I'm going to present the scientific side. Michael Saraceno got really nerdy. I freaking loved it. I never met the guy before. I put out the call to anybody to show up, and he contacted me on Twitter, and he was like, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to talk about how this contributes to Alzheimer's, and started breaking down scientific paper after paper. And I was like, yeah, uppercuts. Oh, we're getting them. And then Amanda Bays, who is known as Madison Star Moon, for those who don't know her, she's literally made hundreds of calls to the FAA and every government agency about this problem. She's the one that introduced me to Dr. Rangasai Halthori, who's the head of the FAA's Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative. And I actually had 3 separate phone calls with Dr. Rangasai Halthori, during which we argued a lot about semantics and how stupid, it is to think that just having some, laws on the books, which are pieces of paper, would stop companies from altering jet fuel and therefore climate. Leading up to a final interview where I sent him a series of questions. And when he wrote me back, he wrote, and this is like the quote of the century, "We would like to have more contrail-induced cirrus clouds by day and none by night," which goes all the way back to what Borisov said back in the early 50s, that we could make a cloud blanket to melt the Arctic. Because what they've realized is that's exactly what's going on. That if you look up, Greenland ice sheets melts more when it's cloudy. If you look at any of the papers that have been released since my 2015 hearing, there has been Jasper Kirkby from CERN. He also agreed when he did his cosmics leaving outside droplets experiment, that clouds trap heat and that we got all of the climate change models wrong, and that clouds are probably melting the poles more than greenhouse gases. So we're slowly getting towards, kind of this full disclosure moment, but we really still haven't touched on the military agenda. And Amanda Bays is from Virginia Beach. And Patrick Roddy is from San Francisco, and Max Bliss is from Europe, and I was good friends with all of them. Actually, Patrick Roddy was the one I knew the least of at the time. Patrick just happened to be in the same room with Max Bliss when I called him up and said, "Hey, bro, I'm going to Washington, D.C. Come with me." And Patrick's like, "Hey, can I come too?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah. Who are you?" And he told me, and I was like, "Hell yeah, more the merrier." So are they trying to melt the poles? Yes. Are they trying to save the poles? Yes. Depends on which they you're talking about. Because if you Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever, and I'll do it right in front of you. And you put it in quotations. Put this in quotations. New Cold War. Drilling. Arctic. If you do that, and you're going to see, well, look at me in the top slide. Contrail Cirrus melting poles release anthrax. And yeah, that's pretty freaking cool that that's even up there at the top. I'm finally stopping using the using the Google so much. But if you do the same thing on Google, watch this. I'm going to go to Google. And I'm going to type that in. New Cold War, drilling in the Arctic. New Cold War, drilling for oil and gas in the Arctic. And they've got a big special on theguardian.com. And what you see is, this is where all the oil and gas is. And these are the countries that are claiming rights to drilling. The irony is that drilling is only possible because man-made climate change is already causing this region to grow warmer twice as fast as the rest of the planet. The melting ice makes these huge reservoirs of oil and gas more accessible. It could set major oil companies against each other, but also superpower against superpower as they scramble to exploit the last untapped giant reservoir reserves in a part of the world where the territorial boundaries remain unclear. No wonder some fear a new Cold War over drilling in the Arctic. Screw the polar bears. Ground zero for Arctic drilling, Barrow, Alaska. And, the list just goes on and on. So look into this stuff. There's way more to the story than they're going to tell you. I just realized I didn't actually share any of that on the freaking screen, which is a major fail, of course. Just to rehash that, we'll go back. No. Google this, that, and boom. This is just one of many articles on it. And this is the map I was talking about, and this is the section I was reading. But that's the new Cold War is what they're calling it, over drilling rights in the Arctic. So if you go to weathermodificationhistory.com and you click right down here on the side and you click on melt the Arctic, boom, you'll see all of the different ways that they've come up with to try to melt the Arctic, starting back in 1887 through like 1945, nuke the Arctic, 1929, space mirrors to focus sunlight and melt the poles, end of the iceberg menace, 1912, metal particle space ring to melt the Arctic, 1958. And then the one that I covered in 1958, where they talked about putting carbon black dust all over the poles to melt the poles. So are they trying to melt the Arctic? You tell me. Let me know in the comments. This has been a brief history of the old history of chemtrails, from vapor trails to two states suing the government over smoke pollution of the skies in 1970s, to not doing anything about it, to 2015, and I kind of have a huge jump there just to show you that in two separate cases, nothing was done. And I'd like to highlight this with this little nugget. So a lot of people ask me, well, what happened after your EPA hearing? And if you go to climateviewer.com/Cirrus Clouds Matter, what you'll quickly see is that way down here at the bottom, past the fact, I have the original call from the EPA trying to talk me out of coming to a EPA hearing. And then the EPA hearing itself. I will drop that in chat for you guys now. And what you see is this. So while everybody was arguing over whether to vote for Hillary or Donald Trump, March 5th, jet biofuel enlisted for contrail control. August 11th, 2015. That was 2013. EPA hearing on commercial aircraft emissions. That's the one I was at. July 2016, breaking EPA to limit greenhouse gases coming from airplanes. July 31st, 2016, White House releases Federal Alternative Jet Fuel Research and Development Strategy. September 3rd, 2016, China, US, and Europe pledge support for Global Aviation Emissions Pact. September 12th, 2016, all this right before the election. Greens move to dismiss EPA lawsuit over airplane emissions. That is history repeating itself right there. Oh, wait for it. October 10th, 2017, non-governmental organizations slam UN Aviation Agency plan for biofuels. What are they talking about with biofuels? Jet biofuel enlisted for contrail control. And that is going to be a show for another day. So, what have we learned here today? That as far back as 1948, there were trails coming off planes. They were a problem. 1958, so much a problem. Palm Springs literally got into a quarrel with the Air Force, who told them to kiss their no-no square or move the city. In 1970, 2 states sued. Nothing was done about it. In 2015, the Obama administration sued. Nothing was done to the airline industry. They agreed to use biofuels to fix the problem. Biofuels are not going to solve the problem. I've got even newer news updates on what their new plans are. Avoiding ice supersaturated regions, using advanced computer modeling to determine if these plane farts, these contrails, Cirrus, these chemtrails are going to cool the planet or if they're going to heat the planet. And depending on all of that, they'll either make the clouds or they won't. And we'll get into all of that in the next video. Thank you guys for sticking it out to the end. It's a complex story and it's got a lot of history to it. That's why I really appreciate everybody who, cares enough to learn the truth and are willing to go the next step and actually read the content. So I will post a link to this. All of this can be found right here under artificial clouds. And you can see like the latest experiments and all of that sort of stuff. So what I'll do is I'll just drop that in chat for you guys right now. And you can dig into all of the posts that I just shared in this video. And the same is true over on ClimateViewer.com. I have an entire section on that. And it doesn't, did it ever pop up? No, because it's JavaScript and it's not going to pop up. But that's my old terraforming thing. Anyway, it doesn't work anymore. Old news. Regardless, thank you guys for tuning in. And I appreciate everybody who's willing to think outside the box. Truth and Doubt just subbed. Go, Buddha Buddha. Appreciate you, Truth. I hope that you guys will dig into these articles, read them, share them, download the images, share them on your Facebook, share them on your Instagram. I don't have a TikTok because screw the Chinese government. But share them on TikTok. Make your own videos about this topic. Ask the questions. You know, it's somebody's got to do it. And if you don't, I'm shadow banned. I'm doing my part as much as possible. And I hope that you will too. But just for Sister, was it Sister Golden here, who was mentioning acid rain repeatedly? I just wanted to show I did have that in there. It was the next one. But we got to cut this off somewhere because the history just goes on and on. And I don't want to get into the Freedom of Information Act requests on military weather warfare using cloud creation, because we're going to save that for the next video. The military agenda, the CIA agenda for weather control and geoengineering, coming soon, maybe tomorrow. Tune in for that. But yes, we do have the acid rain problem, and only those of us who are old enough to remember even have heard about acid rain, because today all they talk about is ocean acidification. You just can't make this stuff up. A high-flying theory on the acid rain problem. September 25th, 1982, Pittsburgh Press. Also in the timeline. So I hope this for everybody, I hope this has been informative. And with information comes power. And with power comes great responsibility. So please use this information to attack ideas, not people. Sharing is caring. I hope you share it. Push that like button. Subscribe.